Hello, folks, and welcome back to 10-Minute Elections. Today is Thursday, June 11th, 2020. So today we are going to be discussing our first battleground state that we will of the 2020 election season, and that is Georgia. I currently have Georgia forecasted as a lean Republican at the presidential level as well as both Senate races, but let's take a deeper look. Three very interesting races to discuss in Georgia, much like in Maine, although they're different ones. Obviously, the presidential race, as well as the regularly scheduled Senate election, in which incumbent Republican Senator David Perdue looks to win re-election against a recent primary winner, John Ossoff, former Democratic House candidate. And in the special election, this is going to be a four-way race between incumbent Republican appointee Kelly Loeffler, Republican Representative Doug Collins, Democratic Pastor Raphael Warnock, and Democrat Matt Lieberman. So let's hop right in. This is the 1992 Georgia presidential election map, and this was the last time a Democratic candidate won in the state, when Bill Clinton defeated George H.W. Bush by a less than 1% margin. So we see in this map, and this is back when the Democrats had more rural support, but a little bit less urban support, as opposed to the more polarized maps we're used to today. We see three of Georgia's major cities, Atlanta up here in the northwestern part of the state, as well as Augusta and Savannah. These all went blue, but not by massive margins. Really, what led Bill Clinton to victory, because these three cities alone aren't going to be enough to win in Georgia, is really the rural southern part of the state. Some of the north went red, but Bill Clinton won just enough rural votes, combined with his urban majority, to ride that to a victory in the state in 1992. So let's look at how that's changed over the past couple decades. In 2012, as we see a lot more red on this map, Romney defeated Obama in the state, despite Obama winning both the national popular vote and general election. So you can see Romney wins by a little under 8 points here, about 53% of the vote to about 45% for Obama. And we see that northern rural part of the state, which we see went narrowly red for George H.W. Bush in 1992. That is solid Republican strongholds now. So we still see Atlanta. Atlanta's actually going bluer than it is in 1992. Same thing with Augusta and Savannah. So the urban parts of the state have become more and more blue, about on par with the rest of the country. But really at a low point for the Democrats in Georgia around this time. The Republicans dominate the rural areas, and Democrats' urban majorities aren't enough to make up for this, although they're making strides. So now let's look at the most recent Georgia electoral map. This is in the 2018 gubernatorial election, where Brian Kemp defeated Stacey Abrams, although this one was not without controversy. If you don't know what went down in the 2018 Georgia governor's election, basically at the time of the election, although having been called on to resign, Brian Kemp was the Georgia Secretary of State. So the day before the election, hundreds of thousands of voters disappeared from the rolls, in addition to there already being disproportionately few polling places in Democratic strongholds. So Brian Kemp ended up winning this election by about 1.5 points, but with all of the anomalies of this election, if all of those had not been present, and especially if a supermajority of those had gone to Stacey Abrams, she actually would have won this election. But let's look at this electoral map. So obviously in the north, very rural, and this is still a Republican stronghold, although maybe not as deep red as we see in 2012. But what really makes Stacey Abrams significantly more competitive here than Barack Obama was is her at least competitiveness in the southeastern parts of the state. So in 2012, we can see the southeast, although not as red as the rural north, is still very, very red. It's a darker shade of red. It means it went to Romney by more. In 2018, all of that's still red. Stacey Abrams isn't really flipping much from red to blue, but what she is doing is significantly whittling down the margins that Romney was winning here by in 2012, and coming within 10 percentage points in many of these counties and precincts, as well as obviously holding on to and even blueing the Democratic strongholds in the state, like Georgia, Augusta, and Savannah, the Democratic Triangle here in Georgia. So, in the 2020 presidential race, we can really expect to see the trends from 2012 to 2018 to continue. But the reason that Democrats have more than a fighting chance here is really because of the BLM movement, and especially if Joe Biden picks someone like Keisha Lance Bottoms or Stacey Abrams as his running mate. That's really going to energize the African American, heavily Democratic voters, especially in Atlanta specifically. A lot of folks that may have voted for Barack Obama in 2008 or 2012 and maybe stayed home in 2016, especially if Biden picks one of those two African-American women as his running mate. Most of them are not going to be staying home this election, and we can expect to see the greater Atlanta area go even further to the left of where it already is. But again, part of the reason that George H.W. Bush did not win in Georgia, but Mitt Romney won fairly handily, and Brian Kemp was able to win this election, is because of carrying those rural areas in the southeastern portions of the state, or at least those suburban areas. The really rural part is in the north, but the southeast part of the state is really the part that Donald Trump needs to carry, as well as not losing by absurd margins in Atlanta. So if Donald Trump can do both of those things, drive turnout and margins just enough over in the southeastern part of the state, and he needs to do it by more than Brian Kemp did, Donald Trump can win Georgia like I am currently projecting by about 2 or 3 percentage points. So, with the about 3 minutes we have remaining now, let's look at the two Senate elections from the state of Georgia. So, pulled up here, I have the polls. On the top, this is the regularly scheduled election. It's David Perdue versus Jon Ossoff. So, we see the polls here largely favor David Perdue. There are a couple polls that show Jon Ossoff up by a couple points. But frankly, I think the Democrats are running Jon Ossoff in the wrong race here. Ossoff would be a very strong candidate, if not actually the favorite to win the special election. He was an absolutely prolific fundraiser in a bid where he nearly flipped a red seat in 2017. David Perdue, however, really isn't all that unpopular. He's certainly Susan Collins. And frankly, I think just because of that, and just because of the fact that at least for this election cycle, and this will probably be the last four-year election cycle where we can say Georgia is a red or leaning red state, I think this is certainly going to be David Perdue's race to lose. Let's talk about the special election now. This one's interesting, and as we can see, the polling data is all over the place and possibly worse than the presidential election data we have in North Carolina, which oddly lines up with the Senate data we have in North Carolina surprisingly well, as in they're both totally erratic. So we can see Doug Collins. Doug Collins is the favorite to win this seat. JHK gives Doug Collins about a 45% chance to win this seat here. He was a staunch defender of Donald Trump during the House impeachment inquiry, and he looks to unseat Brian Kemp appointee Kelly Loeffler. Kelly Loeffler was appointed to fill the vacancy opened by Johnny Isakson's retirement at the end of 2019 due to health concerns. He was a Republican senator from the state of Georgia. And then on the Democratic side, we have DSCC endorsed Raphael Warnock. He is a pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church, as well as Matt Lieberman. He is the son of former Connecticut Senator Joe Lieberman and Al Gore's running mate in 2000. So in terms of who I think could genuinely win here, I, again, favor Doug Collins in this race. I find Kelly Loeffler unlikely because this election will be run as a jungle primary, meaning everyone will be on the ballot in the November general election, namely all four of these candidates. The top two, if no one gets a majority, which no one is expected to because both parties' votes will be split two ways, the top two will go to a runoff in January to determine the winner of the seat. On the Republican side, probably Doug Collins. On the Democratic side, it's anyone's game. But once that starts to take shape, if the Republican nominee is Kelly Loeffler, if she's actually able to upset Doug Collins, I think Democrats have a genuine chance at picking up this seat. Regardless of who they go with, I don't really favor either one as having a better chance. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe. I will see you guys next Monday. Peace out.